All right, everybody, welcome to episode 3 of the Church Checkpoints podcast. I'm your host, John. I'm one of the media operators here at Lifegate Assembly of God. Every week, we do a sermon series based on our sermon and the points of the sermon. And this week, we're going to be talking about the sin of pride. This is part of our Baby Monsters series that we're going through and the growing nature of sin. And this week, I have Jordan here with me. Jordan, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. This is Jordan Kiefer. My wife is currently the worship director here at Lifegate. We've been at the church for about a year now, and we've really enjoyed it. Really just love the community here. Love Pastor Ben. I'm just really excited to be here and also on the podcast.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And this past week, our lead pastor was actually on vacation, so your wife got to do the sermon for us.
Yes, she did. She was really excited about it. She put a lot of work into it, and I think it was a really important and big topic to handle. I think she handled it well, and definitely addressed it in a very biblical way, which I think is difficult. But I hope we learned a lot from it. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Was this her first time giving a sermon, or has she done it before?
yeah, she preached, I believe, last August, September, in the Philippians series that we had. But she's looking to hopefully preach more.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that was awesome. I really enjoyed it. Really some good quotes, some C.S. Lewis
yeah,
quotes that were in there, which was pretty cool.
yeah, she drew a lot from his book, Mere Christianity, for that.
Yeah, and so you guys kind of both went to Bible college, right?
Yes, we did. We both went to University of Valley Forge, which is Assemblies of God associated university in Pennsylvania. So we both graduated with our bachelor's, and she's actually about to graduate with her master's from there online, which is also exciting.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'll be honest. I knew about Valley Forge. I actually had no idea it was associated with Assemblies of God until right now.
Yeah,
So
it's really one of the, at least on the East Coast, it's really one of the only bigger schools, I would say, associated with Assemblies of God.
really,
Yeah.
that's cool, man. I one of my cousins actually went there, and I still didn't know that.
Okay.
So
Cool.
that's cool to know. So the first point that we had in our sermon this week about pride is that pride is subtle, and one of the Bible verses that goes along with that is Luke 18:11-14. So I'm going to read that for us. It says, "The Pharisee standing by himself prayed thus: God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, I, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted." So I think it's a real cool verse of like, I remember Pastor Ben kind of talking about before, like, you can be proud in humility, and that's like one of the things that you have to kind of like watch for in this hidden nature of pride, is that like sometimes you don't even really know it's there. It's just sort of like hidden. And even when you're like trying to be humble, if you make it too much about you, it's sort of like you fall back into that pride trap. But give me like some of your like high level thoughts from this topic of pride.
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned the one thing that I really stood out to me, and also in the whole Baby Monster series that we've been going to, specifically, you can't starve something that you don't realize exists, and this
Yeah.
really goes along with the pride is subtle aspect, because if we don't realize that we have pride or selfishness in our lives, and typically we don't, because we're always pointing at other people, like the Pharisee in this passage, and so until we either ask God to reveal, like, hey, where am I struggling with pride in my life, or the church community and fellows, to point out like an area of your life that you should be working on, like you don't really notice it because you're in your own bubble. So I think that's really important. And yeah, like I said in this passage, the Pharisee points to the other one. He said, like, I think I'm not like other men, extortioners, unjust adulterers, and even like this tax collector. And he's just pointing like everything bad about everybody else besides himself and judging them. And he's really
Yeah.
not taking responsibility for anything that's going on in his life, which is really, really pointing. And I think one of the things in this passage specifically that really stands out in a metaphorical sense is the Pharisee is standing. He's standing at the temple, and praying all this, trying to be public and everything. But the tax collector is standing far off. And I think that point really sticks out as like, even though the tax collector was standing far away from the temple, he spiritually was closer to God than the Pharisee was physically closer to the temple. And I think
Yeah,
that's
that's a
just
good point.
the language that it's used there is just really impactful in that sense. And I think also, I know Clara mentioned this on Sunday, the usage of like I think he mentions it like 5 or 6 times. Is like, I do this and I fast twice a week and I give tithes of all that. But the tax collector is like, God, be merciful to me. Like I'm not anything. I need you for everything. So that's really like the things that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're kind of pointing out the location there and how like if your mind of your soul's not in the right spot, like it doesn't matter like if you're in church, you need
Yeah.
that personal connection to God. And the tax collector, even though, he wasn't physically in the church building, his connection spiritually is closer to, to where God is.
Yeah. It's all about heart posture. It's not about your physical external things. God looks at the heart. He always looks at the heart. I think of the story of David when Samuel comes and he's about to choose who's the king going to be in Israel, and all the sons of Jesse come. There's like 10 or 12 of them, and Samuel's like, God tells Samuel like, no, it's not this and this, and then finally he comes to David, and it's like, this is the guy, but he's a scrawny boy. He's like out in the shepherd pasture, but God doesn't care about the external things that you do. He cares about your heart posture.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I feel like there's a lot of times in the Bible where like God promotes someone who you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the story of like King Saul and how he was chosen, he was from like a tribe that like was
Mhm.
kind of like one of the lower down tribes
Yeah.
that like someone wouldn't expect a king to come from this tribe,
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like why him? But it's like he exalts the lowly.
Yeah,
You know?
that reminds me of I've been studying Judges lately, and Gideon, when God talks to him, is like, "You're gonna begin to deliver Israel from the Philistines," and Gideon's like, "I'm the weakest in my clan of Manasseh. Like, why are you choosing me?" And also Moses. You think
Yeah,
of that?
Moses. That's what I was about to say.
Yeah,
That's another good
there's
one.
just so many instances in the Bible where people who are like unimportant, they're not recognized, they have faults, God uses for miraculous things. And I think the point of that is like God can use anyone, as long as you're willing. That's the biggest thing. He asked for obedience.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So let's move on to the second point in the sermon series, which is that pride is dangerous.
Yeah.
And this is a really interesting one. I know on Sunday, your wife was talking about how pride can like lead into other sins, how it's sort of like this leap board for other sins. And so it's kind of like this. I almost think of it like because I'm an audio techie guy, so I'm thinking of it like an amplifier. Like it sort of like creates all this other noise in your life and sort of ends up amplifying it. What are your kind of thoughts on pride is dangerous?
Yeah, I think we see this kind of idea throughout scripture in a lot of ways, as like kind of the almost cornerstone for a lot of other prides. And she was drawing that idea from C.S. Lewis, who talks about this in Mere Christianity, and how, once you begin looking at yourself, it's when all those kind of aspects of like the internal sins that we have, the internal things that we struggle with, really start to show up. And I'm reminded of Jesus' saying, like, it's not what goes into you that defiles you, it's what comes out of your heart. Because she references Jeremiah 17:9, like the heart is just desperately and deceivably wicked. Who can understand it? And so whenever you turn and you isolate yourself from others, you isolate yourself from God, that's when sin really starts to foster, because it's like an echo chamber. And, that's where the enemy wants you to be. He wants you to be disconnected from God, disconnected from your church, your brethren, and it's dangerous because it's ultimately leading down a path where it's not going to end well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes when you're out of community, like that kind of enforces the pride, because
Mhm.
when you're not around anyone else to kind of keep you in line, like it almost automatically like falls back to you. And that's when I feel like, for me at least, on the times when like I've skipped church too much or not been around community, that tends to be like when I start thinking more in my own terms, and
Yeah.
start making it more about me. So I think that emphasis on kind of a using community as like a defense against that is
Mhm.
really good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think what's really striking with that is also the people that you hang around with. Like, it's not just your church community is very important, but also like who you're hanging around with. Are they uplifting you? Are they, pointing to scripture? Are they praying for you? That kind of thing is also really important. Because like if you're a Pharisee among Pharisees, you're not gonna get anywhere. The blind leads the blind, they're gonna both fall into a pit. And so that's just really important too.
Yeah. So when we think about like evangelism, do you think like evangelism is done better kind of in groups maybe because it's kind of easier to like defend yourself from falling away into the world that way?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends exactly what context you may be referring to. If you're going out into like, here at the church, like we go to the Columbus Market outreach every like once a month and talk to people walking by. I think that's better in a group just because, you need camaraderie in that sense, but also people who maybe are gifted in other ways that you aren't going to be
Right.
gifted, which is really important. And, like verses came to mind is like Jesus sent them out two by two together to go out and heal the sick and cast out demons and all that. But also Jesus says where two or more are gathered, so my spirit is also. So I don't think evangelism. Of course, you can do it by yourself. You can go talk to people, but on like a public scale, I think that's when like the group of believers and like the church community as well should really push out in a public setting for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So, a third point in our sermon series is that humility is the way out.
Mm.
And I've got the quote from C.S. Lewis here: humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting to drill down. And sometimes maybe it's hard to thread that needle where like you're trying to be humble, and sometimes like you can fall into the other end of that where you
Mm.
just start beating yourself up.
Yeah.
And I think it's maybe different for everybody, like every individual is different. But I know like for me sometimes it's like sometimes I have a tendency to fall on like one end of the spectrum. It's like either I'm doing great, life is going perfect, I don't feel like I need anybody else.
Mm.
I start getting into that pride routine, or everything's going terrible.
Yeah.
Life is
Yeah.
awful. What am I doing? I'm the worst.
Yeah.
And then I start beating myself up, and it's like I just can't get into that middle ground. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. She touched on that aspect of false humility. And when it's like you're putting yourself down, but at the same time, like you're seeking attention from other people, like, oh, I'm horrible at this. Like this is, and my life is just going all this way. And you want attention from other people to feel pity for you and that kind of thing. And that's just not the way to go because for one, like you're lying to yourself. Like God's with you. Like God is never going to leave you. And life can be tough, but you shouldn't be seeking affirmation from other people. You should be seeking help from God in that sense. So it's a dangerous thing, and I think when we're overburdened by so many things in the world, it can be like almost a reactionary thing, just to put yourself down. But I think that's also goes back to the aspect of like community. We need people around us to be like, hey, don't think like that. Like lift yourself up, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, it is kind of like I don't know, like I think the more that you're sort of like in the body, like the more humble you become, because I feel like for me, like I see the believers around me who have already struggled with things like that,
Hmm.
and then
Yeah.
you can kind of talk to them about it. How did you get through this?
Yeah.
Um, give me some pointers on getting through this kind of thing. It's like really important.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And towards the end of the sermon, she gave 4 points, application points that I think really just kind of like, hey, like, so how do I kind of address this issue of pride or realize, it's something I struggle with? And her first thing is admit that you have an area of your life. And she asked a couple questions. I don't remember, but I think some of them were like, where do I get touchy? Where do I get defensive when people ask certain things? So like admit that like, hey, that's an area that I need God to work on me as well. Ask for help, ask for assistance from others. The third thing, celebrate others. Like when you're congratulating other people and lifting them up, encouraging other people, that also helps. And the last thing is just pray, like be in communion with God. Psalm 139, search me, O God, know my heart, try me and know my thoughts. Like that should be a daily prayer, I think.
Yeah, I think when I look at those 4 points, like sometimes the hardest thing for me is like celebrating others,
Mm.
especially if it's like something that I wanted to do,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. That's the
I
worst,
wanted
right?
the limelight for that,
Yeah.
and then somebody else grabs it, and it's like, oh, but then I still got to try to remember it's like this is great for them, and you got to celebrate that because like God has a plan, and you never know what it is. Like
Yeah.
you could be thinking it's one thing one day, and the next day something new happens, and all of a sudden like you're in a whole different pathway, and like that's happened so many times where I've been like, oh, that's what he was working towards.
Yeah.
I just didn't see it,
Yeah.
I didn't know it was coming. Um, but yeah, and then the other thing for me, I think, is like prayer is just something that I got to get better at. Like I'll do a lot of like what I call micro prayers,
Hmm.
where
Yeah.
like I'll pray for like 15, 20 seconds real quick, but I feel like I don't do a great job at like really staying in depth in prayer for a decent amount of time, which I
Hmm.
think I got to get better at.
Yeah. Everybody struggles with that. Everybody's just, addicted to their phones or they're busy and everything. We don't find time to pray. But I think, for obviously like setting time apart to pray for things is important, but it's also, I think like micro prayers is kind of a good expression because like you can be praying all the time. Paul says pray without ceasing. And in my mind, it's not like I have to be like on my knees, on the floor, like praying to God for hours and hours. It's like prayer is a conversation with God you're having all the time, especially with the Holy Spirit indwelling with you in you. So in those moments where maybe you feel yourself reacting to a situation in a negative way, you should be like, God, like I didn't feel right about this. Like search my heart, like teach me something in this moment. So it's an ongoing internal dialogue with God and the Holy Spirit, which I think is important aspect of prayer. It's not the only thing, but it's important.
Yeah, definitely, man. Um, all right. Is there anything else that you wanted to hit from this week?
Yeah, I don't think so. I did want to jump. I just wanted to mention this because I think this really hit home for a lot of people. And I know it's going back a little bit, but this is James 4:6 when it says that God opposes the proudful, but gives grace to the humble. And Claire mentioned this in the sermon. I know people like really this kind of made it concrete for them. But the word opposes in Greek is a military term, and
Mm,
what that's communicating is God is actively opposed to you when you're pride in a military like formation. And so she was like, do you want to look up when you're prideful and see the army and God against you? Like, no, you want to be
the
on the side
riders
of
of the
God.
apocalypse and all
So
that.
I think, I think that just really good imagery that kind of sums up like when we're prideful, God is turned away from us. He's against us. And until we turn back to him, it's going to make everything in our life more difficult.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like it's sometimes we think like God's more passive than he is,
Yeah.
And it's like,
sure.
oh yeah, like God doesn't like it.
Hmm.
It's like sort of brush it to the side, be like, no, like God doesn't like it. Like
Yeah.
like and he might punish you for something like that. He
Mhm.
reserves that right. So it's something that you got to take seriously that I think a lot of times we don't take as seriously as we should.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that's a great point. It's been great having you on this week.
Thanks.
Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
For sure.
And next week we'll be back with another episode of Church Checkpoints. So we hope to see you then. Have a good one.